We're joined by our senior analyst for political and military affairs, Tulsi Gabbard. And Tulsi, very cool. You participated yesterday in one of those Twitter spaces that Elon Musk has been hosting and offering to host for any of the presidential candidates who are running. It started with Ron DeSantis. There were a lot of conservatives tuned in, a lot of Republicans tuned in about a week and a half ago. I think it got 3 or 4 million views. So, I mean, it builds up views too over time. And he had RFK Jr. on yesterday, and David Sachs hosted, but you were participating as well. And I wanted to give you kind of an opportunity for people who maybe didn't know about it yet. I think they should. A lot of our audience has been listening more and more to what RFK Jr.'s had to say, and certainly has been tuning into his ideas and kind of how he's been talking about things like the border and things like just U.S. sovereignty and not demonizing each other for having different political views. But what was it like kind of participating in this very new venture from Elon Musk, this Twitter Spaces, which I think they go on for a little bit of like a couple of hours. So what was that like?
It was about 2 hours long. Jordan, what's interesting is these platforms are becoming increasingly important because there is such a vacuum of information in the mainstream media. And this is one of the big problems as we look to this next election, but it's also just in general a big problem that we're facing across the country and around the world is if we, the people, exist in a vacuum of information, if we don't know what's really going on, then we are not equipped to we can't make decisions because we don't have information. And so when you see the mainstream media, especially as we look at this election, depriving voters from information, in this case, in the Democratic primary, almost pretending in many ways like there's not even a primary and that there's no opposition to President Joe Biden, they are depriving voters with their right to be able to make that informed decision. So when you look to what Elon Musk is doing, and he and David Sachs, as you mentioned, hosted one with Ron DeSantis, and I think at some point they said, look, we'd welcome all candidates, regardless of political party, to come on and take advantage of that platform and have a real conversation. And that's exactly what it was. It was a real conversation. It wasn't just like some canned speech, written talking point. There was a lot of back and forth between Bobby Kennedy and the hosts. I and a number of other people were invited to come on and to ask some questions. And you could tell for those who were listening, it was almost as though you were sitting in the room and listening to this conversation that covered a whole host of different topics. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we need more of as we head very quickly into this next election. Because there are very clear differences when you listen to what Bobby Kennedy is talking about on many different issues, from domestic to foreign policy. He holds positions that in some cases are in stark contrast to President Joe Biden. He has a lot of strong beliefs on different issues. He mentioned yesterday that he would seal the border immediately and take the necessary actions to do that. Talked about a lot of different issues, but these are the kinds of things that voters cannot see side by side because the DNC has decided they will not allow debates, very arrogantly and offensively dismissing voters' intelligence and right to be able to make that informed decision. And so hopefully there will be more and more platforms like this, again, just so people can recognize, hey, this election is not a foregone conclusion. The outcome of these elections lies in the hands of we, the people, the voters. Politicians forget that sometimes, but we cannot forget that. If we want to see change in this country, and we need to see change in this country, we need to seek out that information and make sure that we are making the best decision for us, our communities, our families, the American people in our country.
Yeah, I mean, we know even from our own audience, more and more people are less inclined to want to say that I'm just a Republican or I'm just a Democrat, and that they can just fully identify. And some of that is just because of what they pay so much more close attention to how Washington operates. They realize it's more like Washington versus all of the rest of us, and the rest of us trying to get good things done for the country. And I always thought when he said that about the border, and he just made it clear, he's like, you can totally support having a very secure border. You're not a racist. You're not xenophobic. There's nothing wrong with you as an American or as a person to want to have that secure border. And here's why. And it's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, we've been trying to say this too, but he can at least talk to an audience that I might not be able to talk to, like how you could talk to an audience I'm not always able to reach as well. But inside the DNC, I mean, we've seen how they've treated people like you inside the Democrat Party who could have been a strength, who were a strength for their party, to show diversity within the party, to show youth within the party, your military service. I mean, the list goes on, but yet, again, you challenged any of their kind of structures, and you're kind of on the way out. They push you out. Is there a way, a sense, and you'd probably know better than I would inside, that you could, that someone like an RFK, if he keeps polling at these numbers or even goes higher, gets more support and resources, could almost force the debate? I mean, is that a potential, or do we just give up on these kind of old institutions and move forward to like Twitter Spaces and other places to have the conversation?
I think that if the DNC continues to continues to reject reality that there actually is a Democratic primary, then I expect that voters will look to other. I hope that voters will look to other places to get information, to recognize that there is in fact a primary. There are clear choices and contrast here between the different candidates who are running against President Biden, and make an informed decision. To be clear, I'm not on the way out of the Democratic Party. I left the Democratic Party last fall specifically because of the insane elitist cabal of warmongers, their divisive tactics and racializing everything, tearing our country apart, undermining our fundamental freedoms, and because of policies like their open border policy. They don't care about the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. That's really what it comes down to. I see a lot of what Bobby Kennedy is talking about is he is also speaking to these same obvious observations about how crazy it is to have Vice President Kamala Harris, our Secretary of Homeland Security, and others in the Biden administration saying we have secure borders when it is very clear that they are not. They are not secure. And so just being able to have access and exposure to candidates like Bobby Kennedy, to recognize that there is information to be had and there is an election that will occur. Whether the DNC changes their position or not remains to be seen. I would be shocked. I would be shocked if they did. But I encourage other organizations, other platforms to welcome different presidential candidates, because I can tell you from my standpoint, I certainly would switch off the mainstream media channel and go and seek out those interesting conversations like we had yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I remember for a time, and I think you were one of the rare folks in Congress who weren't like bound by this, but it would be very difficult for us, even if we kind of said, hey, we want to talk about this issue with this Democrat on, we're not going to try to hit you on some things we don't agree with. And it was like always a no. And it would sometimes, the staff would be like, listen, it's not us. We just can't do it because of the party. And now there's other places to go. Yeah. Now there's other places to go and places to be. And we appreciate, Tulsi, for all your insight. Keep us updated. I think, again, that's what people want to see, is these conversations. We're trying to provide them for you, too, here on the Sekulow broadcast.